Okay, we're recording. Just a warning.
I can't take back anything I say from this point.
Sure, we can erase the thing.
I think we have some more people coming.
Hey, come on in.
Sorry, I've never been here. Couldn't find it.
It's good to see you.
Thank you. You too.
Well, why don't we just go ahead and continue what we're doing?
Yeah.
I'm thinking it'd be a good idea if we introduced ourselves the way we want to, instead of somebody else doing it. So, would you go ahead?
Sure. I'm Brad Olson, and how do I want to introduce myself? I am a psychotherapist, a depth psychotherapist, Jungian analyst, a private practice, and a cultural mythologist, I suppose, by training. And George and I have been talking about consciousness and exploring that realm for years and years now. And a long time ago, we decided to make our conversations public. And we started having meetings. We just invited people to come like this.
And they came.
And they came.
Like you.
We thought we were so interesting to ourselves, we'd certainly be interesting to others.
And you were right.
So we just thought we'd take that dive, and so here we are. And I also have returned recently to using hypnosis a lot. Speaking of consciousness, which is a really interesting way to explore consciousness. And
Well, you were always a hypnotist anyway. Now you're getting formal training, so you're going to be even more dangerous.
it's a polite way of saying I put people to sleep when I talk.
Then you can blame it on hypnosis.
Yeah.
I really do want to introduce the cop aspect of you. I think that's a dimension that needs to be spoken, if you don't mind.
No, please. I used to be a police officer before I became a psychologist, and I was a cop for about 6 years. I worked in Phoenix, and prior to that was up in North Dakota for a while, and eventually got out with myself reasonably intact, and I think that influences a lot of our conversations.
It
because
does.
we have a similar background in a lot of respects.
We have a rudeness and a crudeness about us
Yeah.
in a positive fashion.
Yeah. So George's marineness messes, it meshes with my copness, and it works pretty well.
Sure does. Well, I'm George Breed, and let's see, I've been in the trenches a long time, and now I'm a geezer. Geezer meaning one who is in disguise, one who is not as he or she appears, is the true definition. I've been a psychologist, I've been a truck driver, I've raised hogs, Marines. I was in the martial arts for a long time, the external martial arts, and began moving over time into the internal, which was more my interest, and teach and practice the embodying of martial arts principles in everyday life. And it works really well, because it's all about relationship. That's what I appreciate about you and me getting together. It's just wonderful. I really appreciate our friendship, because we just meet and we start off. Off we go.
Off we go.
We've been thinking about the same things for a long time. You and I remind me of the double helix.
Yeah.
good to see you.
Good to see you.
Hey.
Hi, Brad.
Nice to see you.
So, we've decided to talk about the heart of transformation. The heart of transformation. Because that's what we've both been doing all our lives. Allowing our own transformation. And more than allowing, jumping into it. Which at times was not always so wise. That's the way it works, isn't it? And the heart, because we're both interested in the heart, but you especially have come up with more heart understandings lately.
Mhm. Mhm. I think there's two ways we can perceive the world, two ways we primarily conceive the world, or experience the world. And it's either going to be through that concept of ego, or through the heart. The more ego one has in one's experience of self and the world, the more we rely on the material world and results-oriented kinds of thinking and productivity notions and linear experiences of time and all that sort of thing are connected to ego. And I think when we move into a perception of the world through the heart, we have a very different experience. Ego keeps us separate, heart seems to unite. Ego wants results, heart seems to be looking for experience. And I think it took a long time for me to integrate this. Many years ago, well, maybe about a decade ago now, I was very involved with Sufism and Sufi thought, and really began to see how important this notion of the heart is, and how it's embedded into our language, our experience, especially of relationships, both to the world and to others and to ourselves. And so heart, it seems to me, is the goal, and to be able to increase the experience of consciousness being located in the heart rather than in the ego. And I think it makes a very different world to inhabit as a result.
That reminds me of the heart math people out in California.
Yeah.
I've been out there a couple of times. They know how to pitch a party, I'm telling you. It's work all day and then party at night with some good musicians in their face. Okay. Hot flashes. Heart people. And they've pulled together some hardcore research, which is published, in P less than 0.01 and all that stuff.
Right.
Fits the scientific model, which shows that the heart, as an organ, generates 40 plus more times energy than this slab of meat here.
Yeah, that was astonishing for me to learn, that the heart produces more electromagnetic energy than the brain does.
Yes, isn't that powerful?
It's an amazing thing.
And they're connected. The heart leads the way and the brain follows behind. Except it's like you're talking about in our culture, we've been taught to come from here a lot. It's reversing now, I think. It's changing.
Yeah.
So we have to think. I have to think what I'm going to say next. Now I don't know what I'm going to say because I'm thinking about it. It'll come from heart, it just comes out.
Right. And this is the temptation we were talking about earlier. I got up this morning and I thought, well, what am I going to say today? And then I remembered, no, this is a conversation with George.
Yes.
And I don't have to figure out or know what I'm going to say.
I had a similar experience. There was that little part of me, which I keep. I don't know how to get rid of it.
You can't. I don't think you can.
Yeah, so I like it. I call it my pet. He sits right back here in a little straight chair most of the time. And so he began saying, I should really prepare something. There are people coming, so I need to have something to say. And then I thought immediately, no, what we're doing is having a conversation. We always go wonderful places
Yeah.
when we don't know it. We don't know where we're going.
Well, and I think this is my goal, is to be able to move into this place where experience itself is the primary sought after thing. It's just experience. I think there is no fundamental meaning in the world. I mean, that this plant has no meaning. The thing is to simply experience it.
And then we add meaning.
And then we bring meaning
We
into
do.
the world and into our lives.
I agree with you on that. That's pretty radical, though,
Yeah.
for the thoughts of scientific materialism. That's pretty radical. Experience is what Wu Chi Ku is about too. the thing I teach, Wu Chi Ku. The Taoist way of moving like a cat. I like cats. I like dogs too, but I learn a lot from cats. When a cat doesn't want to do anything, it doesn't do anything at all. And no one can do anything about it.
It's true.
It's true. Then when it wants to do something, it's here. The heart, to me, has been powerful too. When I went to graduate school, I went to one of those scientific schools. It was that time period at University of Florida, and I was told immediately that I should give up any notion as a psychologist of helping anyone. Well, I thought, well, let's see about this. Because there were two people in that department I really liked, so I hung out with them. And what I had to learn to do, which was good, was to learn to use my head. And that was a great voyage, but I almost went insane. I might have, just being head for that school.
Yeah. There is this, I mean, that also doesn't really have any inherent meaning. Knowledge itself, scholarship itself.
You could have saved me a lot of time.
You have to go a long way, though, I think, to really realize it and have this
I think so.
have this experience. Because without this element of experience, of somehow bringing yourself into that scholarship or into that knowledge, it's empty.
Yeah.
Somewhere, and I think this is the function of mythology, this is the function of metaphor, is that where the inner world meets the outer world, that's where metaphor operates. And it allows us to move back and forth and in and out and around. There's a word that I know you know very well, and actually your usage of it has stimulated me to think more about it, perichoresis.
Oh yeah, that's a great word.
The Greek word means, peri means around, and choresis means movement, dance-like movement. Now, theologians have held on to this word for a long time now, and they don't want to let go of it, because to theologians this explains the nature of the Trinity. That the Trinity moves in this fashion, in this perichoretic way, in and out and around, and in this very dance-like kind of thing. And in fact, in Eastern Orthodox tradition, the Trinity is also referred to as the great dance. So it seems to me this is what metaphor provides, is this ability to sort of dance in and around and through these different experiences of consciousness that we have, which aren't separate, by the way, I don't think there is a separateness. There isn't an everyday rational consciousness, and then there's this sort of altered state of consciousness that opens up spirituality in some fashion, or other sensory processes or things like that. I think it's all one thing. And we're just dancing in and out and around it all the time.
Well, what scares people, I believe, from what I've observed, is the loss of self.
Yeah.
That as individuals separate protoplasmic blobs and don't touch me, baby, without my permission. The one who's making his way through the world, you know. This separation that you're talking about, it produces fear and anger, both of those. So opening to the interflow, which is so simple. It's so simple, it's been rediscovered 10 million billion times across the ages, as you well know. It's so simple that we don't want to do it. We don't want to give ourselves up.
No, we don't. No, we work so damn hard to make a self. And then when we get to some point in our lives, we're asked to let it go. And it's like, no, I put a lot of effort into that self.
Oh, into that thing. Here, let me show you my resume.
But what I've noticed is as I get a little bit older and I see it, you've probably had the experience actually more than I.
Well, you think I'm older or something?
You're a generation older than I am, almost exactly. Too. This is the other thing I like about our relationship is that we're connected in so many different ways.
Yeah.
So as we get older, we start having the experience of becoming more and more competent. And we start to be able to do this ego-based life really well. And just about the time we think we understand it, people tell us, you don't have to do that anymore. We'd like somebody else to do it now. and just when you think you really get good, I was telling George earlier, I watched football yesterday all day. And so just when you think you get really good at carrying the ball, they ask you, come on off the field. And the ego doesn't know what to do with that. What do I do now when I move into this different stage of my life?
It's the Talking Heads song. This is not my beautiful life. This is not my house. Same as it ever was. Same as it ever was. You know, it's just this stuck stuff. And then people rebel against it. We all rebel against it if we had got any sand or salt.
Yeah.
And some of us do it successfully, and some of us die in that encapsulated ego self.
Yeah, literally and metaphorically.
Yeah, both ways. Say some more about metaphor, that word itself. Doesn't it mean above form? Is that?
Metaphor means something like transport.
Oh.
And so, I mean, theoretically, you could stand at a bus stop in Athens and you're waiting for the metaphora. It will take you from this place to that place. That's what metaphor does. It's different. Simile is much more relaxed. Simile is like. The Scottish poet Robert Burns said, "My love is like a red, red rose." That's simile. Metaphor is, my love is a red, red rose. Which makes us wrestle with this, what we feel instinctively to be an impossibility. My love cannot be a red, red rose. We can understand how it can be like a red, red rose, but we can't understand that it is a red, red rose.
And we miss out on so much when we don't know that.
Yes.
If we don't live in poetry,
Yes.
if my love is not a red, red rose, oh, ow, a thorn she had.
So metaphor is demanding though, and that's why we don't live in it, because we don't want to, and we don't want to wrestle with the impossible sameness of love and roses. Instead, we want things to be easier, because then we think we're doing it right if it's easy. We get the message in our culture that if it's hard, if life is difficult sometimes, if emotions are difficult to bear, you're doing it wrong. And that's it's a tremendously flawed view of one's efficacy.
Yes, and it's not just a logical think thing, it's the experience that tells us this. Because something hard, that means there's a boundary here.
Yes.
And if I go, I can't go there,
Mm-hmm.
well, then the game's over. But it's like,
Exactly. And so when we come to that boundary, that's where this tool of metaphor becomes so important, because the metaphor goes right through the boundary.
transport. That's beautiful. So when we speak and think and breathe metaphor, then we're moving into transformation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like it.
One of the books that Joseph Campbell wrote was titled "Thou Art That." Metaphor. Not "Thou art kind of like that." But
That's George's next book, right?
You're kind of like a goddess. kind of like a god.
But actually, thou art that.
Thou art that.
And that is the very difficult thing to wrestle with, because most people hear that kind of idea of metaphor, or particularly mythology, which is metaphor, and they say, no, that's a lie. If you say to undergraduates sometimes, give me an example of metaphor, and very often you'll get the definition of simile. This is like that. But if you say, no, metaphor says, this is that, and they say, no, that's a lie.
Well, that lie,
This thing can't be that thing.
that lie is what has disenchanted our universe.
Yes.
Saying it's a lie
Yes.
has disenchanted our universe. And we've disenchanted ourselves in the name of reason and logic in the old sense, the new sense of the term logic. Or in the name of science. If it can't be measured, tasted, touched, if I can't sense it with these physical senses, it doesn't exist.
Yes.
That disenchantment. So what we're talking about, and what many are talking about, is new consciousness, different consciousness, which is really old, ancient consciousness.
Ancient, yes.
Which is open up to the interflow, the perichoresis of all that is.
Yeah.
And being it, not being afraid of it.
Yeah, I think that, you know, one of the things that's, as you know, that's fascinated me lately is the Italian Renaissance, and so I'm just, you know, digging into all of that stuff, and you know, one book always opens another one, and so I found my way from Bruno to Poggio and Lucretius, you know, as a result of that, and this whole idea that is so perennial, it's so ancient, but we always forget it. It always has to be, as you said, rediscovered. That there is something magical about the world. And this is what I loved about the Italian Renaissance. These guys were scientists, excellent scientists in their day.
Yes.
But they were fascinated by magic. And the world to them was enchanted. The world was a magical place. It was capable of producing magic and mystery, and they didn't have to, you know, they didn't seem to be compelled to wrestle with this kind of sort of very rational justification of their efforts.
I can see why you're attracted to that. And save your Renaissance attire because it's coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's true, and I think the more, I mean, people love quantum physics, and you hear everybody talking about quantum physics, even those that don't really, like myself, don't really understand it. Yet it's such a good metaphor.
Say some more about that.
Well, science is itself a good metaphor. It allows this penetration of boundaries, and the boundary being this mystery of existence. Why are we here? Science does a really good job collecting facts about that and using those facts to make life entertaining and comfortable, and relatively a lot safer than it was 1,000 years ago, for instance. But it's still a metaphor. It can't tell us why. It can't answer the really big ultimate questions about why is there life?
Yes.
Why do I exist? Why do I feel the way I feel? And so it carries with it, because it's such a powerful way of looking into the world, it carries with it a kind of attribution error, where we think that because we have all these facts and that we can know all the facts about a given system and how that system works in its minutest detail, we think then we understand cause. But understanding the facts does not give us any understanding as to cause.
The facts are in a bundle, is another way of saying it. We were talking about a story in Wujiku Saturday, and the story is simple. I think everyone really knows it. It's our scientists, and of course you and I are not denigrating all scientists. There are a lot of scientists who are mages and magicians. In fact, the top-notch ones are. Our scientists look back in time with the best information and instruments and awareness that we have. And they look back for this universe and this Earth about 15 billion years, something like that. But they can't see beyond that. And there's that cause you're thinking about. It's the mystery.
Right.
Whatever is emerging, whatever came out of that wellspring is still springing. It's still happening. And for us to delimit a certain part of it and say this is all there is, well, that just doesn't make any sense at all. That's why many of us pop out of that. We say, science becomes a religion, in the worst sense of the term, religion.
Yeah.
Something to swear to.
Which is a literalization.
Literalization.
Concretization of the
Yes.
metaphor.
Yes.
And then it no longer allows this kind of permeable movement.
How do people break out of that? Or do they? Do we?
I don't know, maybe it occurs to me as you say that that's a sort of neurosis we develop. And so Otto Rank said, who was one of Freud's, I think, most brilliant students, who eventually was banished. He committed Oedipal heresy.
Oedipal heresy.
He was thrown out. But Rank said that the most defining characteristic of a neurotic is that they have an inability to unlearn. And it seems to me that unlearning is the way to keep metaphor alive. So you're always throwing into question what you think you know. You're always questioning your own assumptions. You're always wondering, well, is that true always? Is that even true some of the time? Or is it just, as Nietzsche said, a comforting illusion, that without which I would suffer?
The Japanese have a saying, which I don't know in Japanese, but I know it in English. Playing ball on running water. That's not getting stuck.
Right.
So, since we're riffing on consciousness today, that makes me think that certain folk then who are stuck in that concrete way, and I don't have anybody in mind, but just in general talking about it, does that mean that they were born with an inability to comprehend because they can't get out? Are we born in a certain consciousness state and we can't go further?
Oh, I wonder sometimes if that's not. I mean, it's a popular notion.
It is a popular notion. We are the way we are.
But I think mostly it's fear that inhibits that movement. We have this fear of losing the self, as we were talking about earlier, or losing our place in the world, losing our family, losing all that stuff that's most important to us.
Yeah, all that stuff that makes us ourselves.
Yeah.
That's it, because we have to give up everything, in order to move out.
And that's exactly the idea, right? At that really seminal kind of beginning place of the Christian mythology. Give up everything.
Give up everything. Mm-hmm.
Leave your
Let it
nets
go.
and come with me.
Mm-hmm. That's that thing that even Ronald Lang had trouble with, this of hating your understanding what that hate means. All it means is, it doesn't mean, hate was not the right translation, in my opinion. It just simply means I cannot stay attached to you. If I stay attached to you, we both die. I'll still love you. I'll still love you. And I'll still love some money. I'm gonna need a little money in this society. I'll still love it in a certain way. But I won't be attached to it. That is a Zen thing. I really like it. You know, I've got this blog called Zen Baptist. The Zen way is you let go of everything. I think Jesus was on it. Don't get me started on that.
Well, I think this is, you know, he is an example of one of these individuals who was able to sort of somehow bear and withstand that kind of expanded consciousness, which I think is very difficult to do, which is the other reason we don't do it all the time.
The stories we have about him, it seemed he did it pretty well.
Yeah. And there seem to be people who come along once every epoch or so who are able to do that.
Let's move into the realm of consciousness. What is in consciousness? You've already mentioned a couple of things, like there's the esoteric, the inside, and the exoteric, the outside. So we have an inside consciousness, and we walk around and often hoping that no one can see what we're conscious of. But I've been able to see since early on people's souls. Made me wonder why I was on this planet. What am I doing here? I was on the border of Alabama and Georgia.
A pilgrim.
A pilgrim. One way I used to say, that's true. One way I used to save myself, the Chattahoochee River was right there, and it was the timeline between Georgia and Alabama, hour ahead, hour behind, that kind of thing. So I'd go stand in the middle of the bridge and go back and forth and what are you doing? Nothing. Time traveler. Age whatever, I don't know, 8 or 9. So we have these ways of helping ourselves. So, are you a fan of the unconscious? Is that a term that means something to you? Or would you use a different term?
You know, I was a huge fan of that for a long time, because my first real exposure to psychology was as a Freudian. And then you sort of moved through the whole wrestling with that into, you know, behavioral psychology. And then what equilibrated out of that for me was Jungian analytical thought. So I am, and I still use the word all the time. And I still use, even in sessions where I'm doing hypnosis, I'll use the phrase unconscious mind. Your unconscious mind is doing this or that.
You unconsciously use the word unconscious.
Yeah. So I still use it. It's a useful conception. But it doesn't have as much meaning for me.
What would you use instead? How would you? Which way are you headed?
I think they're all shadings of consciousness.
All right.
It's okay. I don't think there's a bold demarcation between consciousness and unconsciousness. I think consciousness is what we exist in. We exist in consciousness the way fish exists in water. There's a great old Zen story. This is one of my favorite Zen stories about this fish who swims up to the other buddies in his school, and he says, "I've heard about this most amazing substance called water. I need to go figure out what this is." And so they give him a little party and they send him off, and good luck on your quest. And he comes back years and years and years later, this old grizzled fish. And he sees some of his old compatriots, And they said, oh, God, that's right. You've been gone for so long. You went off to find water. Well, what did you discover? And the old fish says, you'd never believe me. And that's what I think consciousness is. That we're in it all the time. There is no separation.
That's it. So I'll go a step further in your sentence that we're in it, is that we are it.
Yes.
So, and I know you mean that.
Yeah.
I know that's your meaning. That one reason we cannot fully comprehend consciousness is because we are consciousness. Instead of saying it's like the eye trying to see itself.
Exactly.
And so, no wonder we go off to mountaintops and other places to find it. But it's right here with us all the time, like the water with the fish. So a way of comprehending consciousness is the way of non-attachment also, of letting go. And when one lets go, then one can see. And then when one doesn't let go, one remembers but doesn't see.
Yeah.
But one can paint a painting or write a book or something at that moment, at that time. So unconscious it's not as if these things are lurking underneath, waiting to bubble up from some unknown place. These things are us.
They are us.
And I know we've gotten into that a lot.
Yeah, and it just depends on where we're going to focus our attention.
Mm-hmm.
And we can have what, other analysts call, this experience of the unconscious mind, simply by shifting our focus of attention. Hypnosis, again, is simply this deeply absorbed state of attention.
We do not teach attention in school directly. And it seems like that would be a very good thing.
We teach body posture, but we don't teach attention.
We do, don't we?
Pay attention to me, and then when we move, so we seem to have that kind of particular position with our body, then
That's the
people
peculiar
assume
phrase of a capitalistic society.
pay
To
attention.
pay attention.
Oh, yeah.
It's more a give attention.
Exactly.
Yes, it is. And we both know, and all of us know through our own experience, that attention directs energy. That whatever we attend to gets energized. If I attend to some aspect of myself that I don't care for, and I must say there is none at the moment, probably later sometime. When I attend to some aspect of myself I don't care for, it grows larger. So a way of transformation, the very heart and core transformation, can be and is to turn away from that and attend to something else. Because whatever we attend to, we become.
Yes.
If I want to become more light, I attend to being light. And you and I both know in our lives, if we want to attend to being, we get into that.
Yeah.
And then we can become snarly.
It's almost as if the way that you choose to be in the world creates your reality. It's almost like your personality creates your reality.
Say some more on that.
Well, if, as you were just saying, if we choose to be looking for reasons to be upset, to feel like I'm not being treated fairly, which I can do really well. I really do that well. Somebody else's, this is part of the reason I was a cop, I'm convinced of it, because I cannot stand for somebody else to get away with breaking the rules if I can't. I don't mind the idea of breaking rules particularly, it's just that if there's unfairness in it, that I can't break the rule, then that really bothers me. And so I had to, I was like the fun patrol, I think, in some fashion. But so we create that reality then, that I'm treated unfairly by others in the world, because that's what I'm expecting, that's what I'm focusing And if we do, if what we focus on, I mean, that's all we see.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's what, of course, we're going to get into our field of awareness.
I see that, and I know we all bump into that. We must in some realm of our lives or another, I would think, which is, I will be working in the same realm as someone, same environment. And this person will say, "Oh, this is unfair. This is awful. How come you aren't all upset about this, George?" Well, I'm focused on something else. I see the unfairness, but I've been alive long enough to know. I was thrown out of Students for Democratic Society for being too positive. I've been around long enough to know, at least for me, and I generalize, that if I attend to unfairness, I'm just going to wind up in hell myself.
Yes.
So yes, there's unfairness. Okay, now what are we going to do?
And that's the important part of being willing to have these experiences without attaching some sort of judgment to the experience. Because if you're just always going to attach judgment to the experience, we just say, well, I should never have that experience.
Yeah.
And we don't get anything from it. But being willing to open up to that and say, what is that really about? What does that really mean about me and the way that I think about myself and think about the world? Then I can decide if I want to change that or not.
The old samurai was some of the strongest, if not the toughest, warriors in the world at any given time. Had a saying, and it's based on experience. The best defense against unfairness, against a sword, against anything, the best defense is total vulnerability. Now, doesn't that just knock your socks off?
Yeah. Like, remember we did, this is several years ago now, we did a talk one night about noir crime novels. And George came up with the term, or we came up with the term, I think it was you though, that we called the protagonists in these noir novels, like Raymond Chandler novels, you know, or the Dashiell Hammett novels, we called them noiriers. And there's this idea of wrestling with the dark.
With the dark.
And it seems to me that that's an example of that kind of way of being defenseless. Because either one, whether it's Sam Spade or you know, Philip Marlowe, they're like in this world and they're entirely defenseless. They're always getting the crap knocked out of themselves. And they just get really battered and beaten and it looks like there's no hope that they're ever going to find their way out or to the heart of the mystery. But they always do because of their willingness, in fact, to have that experience.
And to be vulnerable.
Without judging it.
That, if anything is bravery, which is a peculiar term to me, that's it.
Yeah.
It is being vulnerable and going on anyway. The vulnerability, though, does not have to come with self-torture or being punished from outside. Aikido is a good example of that. It's difficult art. The way of flowing in harmony with what is. So using that as application to everyday life. I had a man come up to me, you know, I was drinking my way into Nogales on Cinco de Mayo, tequila shops, going further and further into Mexico. I wound up at a table with some Mexican gentlemen, and one of the men said to me after a while, he said, "You really should leave." And he was a very wise man. I said, "Oh, okay." So I got up and went to the door. Another man got in front of me. And I was such a fool. I still am. He said, "What's the matter? Are you afraid?" And for some reason that struck me as extremely funny. And he just moved aside. I went on out, staggered my way to the border. This one does not have to be hit over the head in being vulnerable. Oh, this is what it is, I think. Beat me up if I'm not, beat me up verbally if I'm not. Let's see, that the heart, it's the centering in the core of heart that makes one both vulnerable and unstoppable. So knowing where to center, if we all know where our heart is, if we all know where our heart is located in the psyche of our being, if we know where it is, if we can feel it, and we're centering here in heart, then everything is fine.
Yes, yes. I think that's true because that says so much better what I was trying to draw out earlier, I think, of my own thoughts. But the idea that experience is just experience. It doesn't have an emotional or a moral valence. And so if you can experience it just as experience, you don't have to get all, wrapped around the axle with it. Because that makes it easier to let go. It's just an experience.
Just experience.
It didn't feel good in the moment. Well, that's an experience too. It doesn't mean anything about me.
Oh, that's awful. What? That is so. In this state of consciousness, which I believe is natural consciousness, we work so hard for the other one.
Yeah, I think
It's
our
not about-
rational consciousness, more and more, I think that's the really altered consciousness. I think naturally maybe we are meant to be these kinds of creatures.
When we're natural, we talk with ravens and so on.
When I was about 8 years old, and my family every summer used to go up to northern Minnesota, and we'd hang out at a lake for a couple of weeks. And I was walking with my father through this forest, and we came into this place that was this clearing. I don't know why. All I remember that it was rather circular and it was clear of trees, and everything around us was all heavily forested. And when we walked into this place, I heard distinctly this a cappella choral music. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard in my life. And I turned to my father, and I'm holding his hand, and I said, "Did you hear that?" And he said, "Hear what?" And I went, "Nothing." And just kept walking. But that experience has always been in the back of my mind. What was that? What was that experience? I have lots of guesses now, almost 50 years later, but still, what is that?
What are some of your guesses? What is one of your guesses? If you don't mind saying.
Well, my people go to the place of craziness right away. That's the first explanation.
Oh, that you're crazy?
Yeah.
I think that's one reason we both became
Yeah.
psychologists. Yeah. We say who's crazy.
Yeah. But, mythically, what is that? I said that to somebody, I'll tell you who I said it to. I said it to my analyst when I was in college. And she looked at me and she said, "Everybody knows the trees sing."
Everybody knows what?
Everybody knows that trees sing.
Aye.
And I thought, God, that was a great response. What a great affirmation.
Yes.
So there's that. Mythically, I hear about that all the time. Trees singing, trees being alive, trees. Just read Lord of the Rings and you have a whole mythology about trees. And being sentient and aware and interactive. When Ananke and her daughters get together, her daughters are the Fates. Ananke is the goddess necessity. And when her daughters, who are the Fates, get together, they weave and decide the length and determination of where that thread of your life is going to be cut. And the four of them together, Hesiod says they create the music of the spheres. So maybe that's the music then. But
the three weird sisters.
yeah,
We'll go to story next week.
that's right.
We
That's
can,
right. That's right.
we can talk about the three weird sisters.
Yeah,
Okay,
Macbeth encounters them.
I see some. W-Y-R-D, not W-E-I-R-D.
So I don't know what it is, but I've had enough of these experiences to know that it is.
Yes, which gets back to thou art that.
Yeah.
Let's take a brief talk break for a moment. And sitting is an unnatural act, I think, for too long anyway. So how about if we do just a little bit of movement, and I'll invite you to do some particular movement. And then also there's a restroom back there if it's needed, and then we can come back. That feel okay with you?
Yeah.
All right, here's the way it goes. First, you'll have to adopt the warrior posture, if you don't mind. This is the warrior posture. Okay, some of you know this. In my opinion and experience, it can never be practiced enough. You open to the heavens. You ask for good energy, and you receive it, and you bring it down through you, through your whole being, down through feet, down into Mother Earth. You open again. Ask and receive, bring it through. Settling down, just settling down. And one more time. This settles us, brings us here. Then this one, we open like so, sweep through the earth, and bring earth energy up through us, and release everything to the heavens. The heavens take it. So it's a cleansing, moving through, cleansing, releasing, letting go. One more time, please. Let go. Oh, yeah. Okay. Feel free to use the restroom. We'll take some minutes here, and then we'll begin talking again with whoever's left.
How are you? Good. Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Survives.
Boom.
How was your trip? It was great. We had a great trip. It was really good.
I can hear myself.
Did you want to come back?
Your
Really?
ears, you didn't know you
No, we were actually kind of ready.
Your
Yeah.
ears are a little bit
Paris was really nice. It was warmer. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was really fun. It was just fun being around family. Yeah, it was cold though. No, we were ready to come home, but it was nice. It was the break I think we needed to get away and hang out together, and yeah, it was really fun. Yeah, so I feel better. Yeah, and I feel good too, like physically. I think it's like good. Yay! This is what it's like to feel good again. So yeah, I've been training, and I went back and told George I want to start slow. He was like, okay. Yeah. But it was fine, So I'm back full swing, So it's good. So how have you been for a holiday?
Good, it was really good.
Yeah. First holiday by yourself, in your house, or?
No.
No?
Probably not.
No? You weren't by yourself, or you weren't?
In previous years that John lived there, he's been gone out of town. So
I just meant more metaphorically, like you have your own space.
Oh yeah, That was good.
Yeah.
And I went snowshoeing on Christmas and went to Joan and Brent's on Christmas Eve.
I've been on my bike
Went downtown for New Year's.
Yeah.
so
Was it crazy?
Yeah, I was home by 10:30.
Oh, really?
My friend that I went with was an early bird. So.
God.
I'm gonna get some water. I'll be back.
Okay. Where's the water? Oh, you got some?
I have some.
Yeah, Paris was wild on New Year's. Like, I mean, people were going till all hours.
Yeah, on the street.
Yeah, well, and then you, like, the next day walking around, there's like champagne floats everywhere.
And I built at a single speed last year.
So, did you see me the other day? You must have been getting off work. I was going to where I was waving at you. You were behind me, pulling onto I-40.
Oh, I didn't know I didn't.
And heading over to Cromer. What's your schedule like?
I'm just going into
So you have to go in at 4?
yeah. So I'm gonna be able to go to class for 3 weeks.
So it's been really nice.
Maybe we could get together on a Friday or Saturday.
Yeah, that would be good. Just let me know. Laura and I are doing some training either on Wednesdays or Fridays, but we can do some either before or after. Because we're gonna work on like more advanced stuff. But yeah, either before or after would be good as a warm up or a calm down. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Actually, it's based on
so that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Sunday. Let me know.
Oh, this morning.
I just found out this so therapist. Specific stuff.
Segment.
Oh, okay. Just cognitive
Eve got one.
stuff.
The roof.
So
They're looking at the roof upstairs, the roof is balanced.
Slowly
introduce more
To something.
stimulus.
Just
It's like an eye.
Right.
in the backdrop.
George, do you guys meet often?
We're going to
So
meet
I'm excited about it.
two Sundays.
That's a little more
Next Sunday, we're
gentle.
going to focusing on the heart of
So
I'll say something about
yeah, so at least get you. I think it would be good anyway, even if you're not going to take roles, just to do just even
There's
the
some really
basic.
amazing plays out there.
I really like it.
I haven't seen it.
Try and sneak into the bathroom. So,
And then we don't have anything planned after that, we know how we're going.
Okay. Yeah. I'll think so. No, I'm not yet. Have to do it. That's
Okay.
All right. And so that's.
So you still working on that astronomy place?
I am working at that astronomy place.
You like it?
Yeah.
Your soul is strong.
Is it?
It is.
Good. I've been working on that. That's
I
nice
can
to
tell.
hear.
And Brad,
Hi, Brad.
I just love you. I just love who you are.
Are you there talking
It's so good to see you again.
Yeah.
Glad you guys are getting together.
We email about once every 18 years, but it's always good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't remember about your marine, that we talked about that on email when
Yeah.
you said it today. Like, oh yeah.
That was a long time ago, but it's still in me.
Yeah.
Very fascinating.
Hey, buddy. Part two.
Spreads out.
You're out.
Definitely.
I'm so happy for you.
Nice to meet you too, Brad. Yeah,
It's
definitely.
so good. Doesn't it feel good?
I've read two books. I've got a couple of great runs. All in the last 8 days.
You found snow?
Yes. About 8,500 this morning.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, things so cleaned up.
You don't look like a kid. But you start to feel like one.
Friday morning at 8 a.m.
No, actually, according to your
So
definition
far,
earlier, I've always
like,
been.
went to bed
That's good.
for like the next 24 hours. I think I went to bed 5
Well,
times.
that's how we do it.
Got up,
We have to make a
ate
living.
something, stretched.
So I don't know if
I
that-
can't lay there anymore.
That's a weird assumption.
That's true.
Wow. Because I do it every weekend too. I have to try Yeah, I asked my boss.
Make your living.
I sent her email Friday asking if I could use 6 days of relationships. Yeah, just so we can transition one time. But
Anyway, we're out.
I don't know yet. Oh.
We're loose.
Yes.
Friday morning, right
yeah.
before I left, so. We'll see.
Let me see if I can get us back together
Out
over
there.
here.
I'll be in the dark for 6 weeks, but oh, I think at least I'll be
Hey, it's still going.
alert, I think.
You'd wipe the floor with me. I'd run screaming.
Oh, that is the truth.
No, there's my defense, all right?
She started laughing immediately. Then we have her.
Oh, brief commercial announcement. If you have donations, they'll go here, please. If you don't, that's okay. Where weren't we? That's something I read from Rumi this morning. Is to go to the land where instead of asking how are you, they ask how aren't you? Rumi. So how aren't you?
I'll answer with more Rumi.
Okay.
He has this poem where he says, I shoot an arrow left and it lands right. I chase after a stag and I am chased down by a boar. I dig a hole in which to trap others and I fall in it myself. I should be suspicious of what I want.
Rumi is certainly a good role model. He's one to let it all go.
Yeah.
I think that Shams, I guess is the way you say, his friend saw him studying away in all his books, and he recommended, this is the story I heard anyway, that he throw all his books down the well, I don't know if he did it or gave them away, but he got rid of his books and opened his heart and just started living from his heart entirely.
Yeah, you know, he was so amazing at being able to put that experience into words. And a lot of Sufi poets were just, you know, Hafiz and Rumi and, you know, the list goes on. I can't think of any more off the top of my head. Plage. They were so wonderful at being able to communicate the beauty and the enchantment of the open heart.
Yes.
And being able to perceive the world and the self, consciousness through that organ.
The humor of it.
Yeah.
Hafiz, he said, God and I are like two fat people in a boat. We keep bumping into each other and laughing. So it shows with those folk and others that it's not a serious thing. It's not a grave thing. There's a lot of laughter in it.
Well, I think you found that too when you were practicing psychology, right? When you were in practice, I bet there was laughter coming out of your office occasionally.
More than occasionally. If there was not laughter, I knew that something had not happened.
And it's possible to be talking about really hard things and still find humor and laughter and absurdity in the whole experience. I think it's essential.
So part of consciousness, I'm coming back to our stated theme here, part of consciousness is great laughter. It's like the sound that you heard when you were walking with your father. I have heard laughter. It's not laughing at, it's laughing with. There's laughter that goes on. And that's reassuring to know that the cosmos laughs in a very good way.
It has to have a tremendous sense of humor, I don't think.
Well, look at the state we're in.
We're so absurd.
Walking meat.
It's some science fiction or other. I'm not a huge fan of science fiction, but my wife is. And somewhere I have read or seen something where the alien encounters the human and describes them as bags of mostly water.
Ugly bags of mostly
Was it
water.
ugly? So you know. So what was this that I'm vaguely remembering?
Star Trek Next Generation.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, that was a deeply philosophic show, I think.
Oh yeah, that was great.
There's one of my favorite. I'm getting off the point. Is that off the point? Maybe
No.
not.
Well, point.
What is the point? I don't know that there's a point. So
Is this lifeboat?
we'll try and find a point.
Yeah.
So there was an episode that I saw with my wife. She loved the show, and I thought it was really well done too. But the episode was Picard and Riker are standing there on the bridge of the Enterprise, and they've encountered some sort of probe or something. And after the commercial break, this probe sucks Picard's consciousness into it. And so he's inhabiting this world. It's a rather pre-technical world. It's a very beautiful place. It's sort of based in relationship to each other and artisanship and all that, but none of the technology that one might expect. And so in that sense, it was, to use a word that has been used rather badly, a kind of a primitive place. But it was this very beautiful place. And Picard resists it greatly. He's trying to find a way out, with all of his, intellectual and resources, and the Greek word is metis. He's very metis-like. He's like Odysseus in that sense. He's very clever and very cunning. But he can't find a way out, and eventually he just sort of surrenders to it. And he has this lovely wife and these amazing children, and he learns to play the flute. He teaches himself to play the flute as a way to sort of adjust to the place. And he has this lovely, long, meaningful, deeply related, deeply connected life in this world with these people. He comes to his own death, as I recall, right? And it's a beautiful death. The people that love him are around him. The community is there. It's just this gorgeous thing. And so he dies. He's back on the bridge of the Enterprise. And Riker is saying something like, "Did you hear what I said to you a second ago?" Yeah. So this is a story. I don't know if the writers intend this or not. I don't know anything about the show really behind the scenes. But this is almost an exact retelling of a Vedic story that exists in Hinduism, where a disciple of Vishnu was rewarded by Vishnu saying, "I'll give you whatever you like." Gods often reward us this way. You're so great a disciple, I'll give you whatever you desire. That's a Faustian bargain. So this, I wish I could remember his name, but he says, well, I want to understand the concept of Maya, which is the Sanskrit word that means illusion. And the teaching is that life is illusion, is Maya. And he says, I want to understand Maya. And Vishnu says, ask me something else. This is too difficult. And the guy says, no, you said I could have what I want. This is what I want. Teach me about Maya. And so Vishnu says, well, all right. But before we get started, I'm a little bit thirsty. There's a little village down the road about a quarter of a mile. Would you get me some water, please? Being the good disciple that he is, he saunters down the road, and the first house he comes to, he knocks on the door. And the door opens, this young woman answers the door. The text says that she has the same eyes as his Lord, which should be good. And he's absolutely lost in her. And he keeps coming back time after time just to talk more with her and talk more with her. And eventually she comes to the point where they start to date. And they start courting.
Our humble apologies. We just want to show our face because we got caught in an accident.
Oh no!
Coming up the canyon. Hey Susan. Hey George. So sorry.
Come on in if you wish.
Come on in.
Yeah. It's okay.
Hello.
George.
You know what? Let's sit back here. We just wanted to interrupt you.
Oh, you're gonna be backseat Baptist, are you?
Well, no, can't do that.
Okay.
I'm Brad, by the way.
I'm Devonna.
Hi, it's nice to meet you.
Yes.
Hi,
And this is Lauren.
how are you?
Good.
Thanks for coming. I'm just telling a little story from the Vedas. And so he loses himself in her eyes and falls in love, keeps coming back over and over and over. They date, they have this very formal Hindu courtship, you know, and parents finally consent to their marriage. Eventually they marry. They take up residence there with her parents, and they farm this little section of land and all of that. They're very happy. They love each other very much. He likes her family, they like him. They have a child. A couple of years later, they have another child, and then another. And life is really, really good. Children start to grow up. Parents are getting older. Eventually they get sick and they die. They inherit land. They have this extraordinary life together. One year the rain is heavier than it usually is, and the river that runs in front of their place begins to rise and spill over the banks. And they realize that if they're going to have any hope of getting away safely, they need to get across the river now. And so he puts the smallest child on his shoulders. He grabs the another by the hand, his wife by the other hand, who has the other child by her hand, and they set across the river. And the current is stronger than they thought, and it pulls them under. And he loses consciousness when he hits his head on this rock. And he wakes up on a sandbar, and he realizes that everything he cared about in the world was gone. His family had died. And he begins to weep. And he hears this voice, "Child, why are you weeping?" And he looks up, and there's Vishnu. And Vishnu says, "You know, about 40 minutes ago, I asked you for some water. I was wondering what was happening with that." It's the very same story that shows up in this Star Trek episode. Now, the writers may well know this mythology, I don't know. But it also suggests how powerful this archetype is. And the way that we experience consciousness comes through, I think, these archetypal forms. They are the structures consciousness produces. And so we respond to them. We know them inherently within us, deeply within us. And I think that one of the more interesting experiences that one can have is to sort of shift the perspective into seeing archetypally and seeing mythologically rather than seeing in a kind of concretized, literalized way that this is me. This is the extent of my experience, and I can extend myself into the world about 3 feet, and that's it.
What you're saying, is as you speak, the wonderfulness of words, the images, I can see in what you're saying, I can see what you're saying. And seeing it, I feel it. And that's powerful, very powerful. It leads me to open to the realm of the imaginal.
Yes.
That there are at least three worlds in this way of thinking, at least three. They're innumerable, at least three. One is the world of reason. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a ratio logic, being ratio now, rational. And the other is the realm of emotion or senses. And the third is the realm of the imaginal. And I've become more and more aware of this realm of the imaginal, as you know in our talking, and I'm still wrestling with that and understanding it. I'm convinced of its powerful reality. And I know that I live in the imaginal more than other places, though I can be quite rational if I need to, but I'd bore you to tears. And if I were to get emotional, you know, we'd be having some difficulties, so I'd need some tissue, buddy. But the imaginal is a place of great energy and power, and it's the realm of archetypes. See if I know how to say this. We have our imagination. We can fantasize anything. You know, I can say triple scoop ice cream. Fing, you know, it appears somewhere. But that's not the realm of the imaginal. It's close to it, similar to it. I'll just come right out with it and say what I see, and then maybe you can help me understand this more. I see, not with these eyes, but with inner eye. I see what is best called the realm of angels. And I've been studying and opening into angelology.
Swedenborg.
Yeah, Swedenborg and Henry Corbin.
Yeah.
And others too. And at first I was resistant to this. Angels, give me a break. Okay, what do I call this? What do I call this? Angels is an all right term. Spiritual beings. Okay. Now I'm not seeing angels flying around the room. And I don't need any meds except coffee. Black coffee. So I'm risking by speaking out here with this, that there is a realm of the imaginal, and it's the realm of the spiritual. You know, because we've talked for a long time, that I awaken in the morning quite often with words being spoken to me.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, they're strong words.
I love to hear those.
There's something else.
Letters from the front, so to speak.
I write them down now. And I know where it comes from. And when I'm quiet and listen, which is most of the time now, being a geezer, I've got this, but I don't value it as much anymore. It's okay. Then I know and I see that there's a whole realm of energy, is another way to say it, a whole realm of energy that steps down into this. Go back to perichoresis. You can see I'm struggling with this to get words to it. English,
Yeah.
The language of business applied to poetry. That in this realm, poetry cannot be written without this realm. In this realm, when one sits quietly, poetry comes, song comes. I get so joyous, I get joyful. I get thrown out of places, I'm so joyous. You can't sing in here. Well, okay. And it's the feeling that we are, and I know this is so, that we are embodyings of the wellspring. We're the last frontier at this moment in time. At this moment in time, we're the last frontier of the wellspring, the source.
Yeah.
We're the nerve endings of God. That's the way Alan Watts put it, and maybe some others too. And this is the realm of the imaginal. One does not go around talking about this usually.
Yeah.
Who are you? Well, I'm George Breed. I'm a guy that takes photographs. I don't say, I'm an embodying of God.
Well, that's the truth. Elijah got killed for that.
Yeah. And you're not supposed to say those things.
He went around and he would say things like, I have Allah under my coat.
Yeah. That.
Which meant I am.
Thou art that.
Yeah.
And we all are. All this is. And that's called the realm of the imaginal, as you know, in some writings.
And see, the thing with perichoresis is that is the vehicle that moves us in and through that realm. It allows us to visit that. It's not a separate reality.
No.
It's just it's another room. If consciousness is this building, those different perceptual experiences are just different rooms. And you can decide to move into those places or not. You can stay in the room you're in if you're comfortable there. I think, does that make sense?
I had to learn to pass for white. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I pass for normal.
To pass for normal. Not to pass, that's what I mean. And so that's one room, is being real white. And I'm using the jargon of the day. It's not a racist thing, because obviously, I'm not entirely white. It's more pinkish brown. But meaning the structure of this particular society in order to not get killed at times. And now I've thrown all that over. I don't care anymore about that. So, the realm of the imaginal do you have a better word for that or a different word? You talk about a room in consciousness, so that makes sense to me too. Though I tend to think of it more as springing.
Well, I think this is what's hard about talking about consciousness, because we don't know what it is ultimately.
Yeah, it gets back to that, doesn't it?
We kind of feel our way into it. We have a feeling sense of what it might be.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that in a fuzzy way either. I mean,
I know you don't.
there are different ways of thinking, and sometimes we think with our brain, but other times we think with other organs. And we have neurons scattered throughout our body, not just in the brain. So when we produce body sensations, I think oftentimes that's a kind of thinking.
That makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. Our body thinks.
Yeah.
Our whole being thinks.
And I think, it's interesting in our profession, the CEU things that come out periodically, mind-body integration.
Who put them apart in the first place?
The scientist.
The body is the mind.
Yeah.
Right? And so everything that gets produced by the body is a production of the mind. And maybe in a very literal sense, in the word production. It's a staging, it's a creation of a metaphor. So that when I go to the doctor and say it hurts when I do this, that's speaking in metaphor. And so the challenge is to figure out what the hell does that mean? Can I move more into that? Can I can I dance with that a little bit? And to dance with something, you have to have some room. So we have to give room to ourselves to experience consciousness. If we say consciousness can only be experienced this way, if you experience this over here, then you need meds. That just doesn't make sense to me.
I experience consciousness as radiant like a sun. You said a staging area, I'll add that area, that each of us is a staging area, a place for something to happen, for appearance to happen, things to appear, for everything to appear. And the model of radiance and the understanding of radiance is that even here, just bringing it all together, that infinity is that way, infinity is that way, infinity is that way, infinity is that way. Every way that we can point and not point is infinity. And infinity this way, and inside too.
Yeah.
Infinity inside this way. And the infinity inside and the infinity outside are the same infinity.
Yes.
And this is who we are.
Yeah.
We're boundless.
Yeah, yeah.
You got a quarter?
And I think image, the world of image, is the way that we realize that. That image naturally wells up in us. It does all the time. We hardly ever see, how do I even speak about this? I think we hardly ever see what is objectively there. We're always seeing ourselves. Or an image of that's reflecting ourselves to ourselves.
Look at that person, aren't they awful? It's just
Yeah.
That's true. We can only see who we are.
The reason Allah tells Muhammad he can't really have a good understanding of what Allah is because Allah says, I am closer to you than your own jugular vein. So it's like, how can you see that? You know?
This is why God laughs a lot. Because God is so close and we don't even see it.
So image, I think, is, again, it's I think, it's not something that we fabricate. I think it's something that exists in the world the same way that we do. And when we shift our perceptual understanding, we see images, or we hear things, or we...
There's a lot more to come. And I see we're moving toward the resolution of this gathering, the re-solution of this gathering, and the beginning again. I really appreciate talking with you.
I love it, it's fun.
It's good, really good. So next Sunday, God willing and the creeks don't rise, as they say. We meet here again at 2:30 and our focus will be on story. And I'm really looking forward to that. We got into a few stories today, but I held myself back with some of them because I knew we were going to hit story next time.
Yeah, we'll talk
And how
about
story relates, that
to
we are story.
transformation. Yeah. One of my favorite philosophers, and I'm blanking on his name right now, said in his correspondence, there would be an agreement to meet at a certain time and place. And he would always say, if I'm still living.
Yes. Yes, if I'm still living. And the other things, if Allah be willing, and so on. Okay. Any other thought before I invite us to move into a closing ceremony?
No, thank you.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I really want to apologize
No,
verbally.
you don't need to.
We came from Sedona and we got behind an unbelievable event, which threw us almost 45 minutes in the meeting, which we would have been a little bit late. But I'm really sorry. I was looking so forward to it.
Well, thankfully you weren't early, otherwise you'd been involved in it.
Thankfully you weren't hurt.
Oh, good.
I'm glad you're here for the minutes that you're here.
Extra on top. I missed
Okay, let's go like this. If you would take your chairs and move them to the side here, we'll do this very simple close your